Hello, this is Nima Golbabai on KUCI 88.9 Irvine. This is, of course, Cinéshow, which was absent last week, and I had a sub. But I'm back this week, and we're just going to be talking about a few random assorted movies. I didn't really get a chance to see anything, as I had a surgery last week, and I was sort of out of commission. But I saw a little stuff around that time that I could talk about. Furthermore, I likely will be coming out next week with a Christmas movie. Not sure which one I'm going to do yet. But I think it's going to be a Christmas style film, and that will be fun for me. But yeah, what we're going to start with is IMDb as usual. And I think we're going to do Oppenheimer, which I actually had the pleasure of watching for a second time last night. And I think I should talk about it again and read some reviews, which I like to do because it sort of gets my brain working. Sometimes I forget what I'm supposed to say about a movie. It's got to be very sophisticated, everybody that talks about movies, I guess. Alright, let's read some reviews to start off. First of all, it's rated quite high on IMDb with an 8.4. However, a lot of films post-COVID seem to all get high ratings nowadays. And there's a few reasons for this. On Rotten Tomatoes, the reason is that they've basically rigged it so only verified users with accounts can do reviews, which basically cuts out a huge portion of the audience that doesn't have accounts and is not a verified account. So it sort of rigs the game to the most how should you say, the most committed movie reviewers will go and write their reviews, and you get really small sample sizes. So Rotten Tomatoes is sort of not even good anymore for new movies, but for old movies, it's definitely fine. And IMDb, movies generally just have been getting really high ratings since COVID, partially because the amount of people going to the movies has gone down a lot, which gives a smaller sample size. Also, I think the standards of the people that are continuing to go to the movies are worse. They have worse standards. And also, I think just people were starved for movies for a while, and when something even average comes out, they really rate it high. However, Oppenheimer is actually not, I wouldn't say it's overrated on IMDb. I would give this movie a 9.5 or 6 out of 10. It is a really good movie. I really like it, and I have a bunch of reasons why. But like I said, I want to get into some reviews. But okay, here. Alright, so the top one is an 8 out of 10. Let's read that. One of the most anticipated films of the year for many people, myself included. Oppenheimer largely delivers. Much of it's great. I feel like I loved 2 of its 3 hours. I liked the other hour, but it's that fact that stops me from adoring the entire thing. I know Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk that I clicked on a second watch, so maybe Oppenheimer will need one too. That being said, I don't feel like I need to rush out and see it again, because it was long and exhausting film. But in many ways, I can't deny it was an exceptionally well-made film. It looks amazing and sounds amazing as you'd expect. It accurately captures the time period it's set in, has great sound design, and one of the best film scores so far. Every performance is good to great, but the film belongs to Cillian Murphy. Or Cillian Murphy, I don't really know. And I feel like he's the lead actor to beat at this stage, if we're talking early awards considerations. The film is at its best when it focuses on being a psychological thriller, featuring a famous historical figure, and at one point it even turns into a psychological horror film. There's one sequence involving a speech that's particularly terrifying. It also manages to have some very suspenseful moments, even though its story is commonly known history at this point. I really did feel the length in the final hour, and I maybe wish that the final act had been more of an extended epilogue rather than a whole third of the movie. I feel as though I would have loved Oppenheimer had it been 2.5 hours instead of 3, but nothing about it was bad by any means, just a little patience testing. This is very subjective. I remember feeling like the similarly long Babylon totally justified its runtime, though others didn't feel that way. I'm feeling like I watched a film that wasn't a slam dunk, but incredible for more of its runtime than it wasn't. And it's still worth celebrating and makes Oppenheimer worth seeing in cinemas for sure. I've heard like a lot of criticism about that it's long and like slow, but I sort of disagree with that. And also, I noticed this person seems to have liked Babylon when I heard a lot of criticism about that movie, that it was like mostly fluff, and I didn't even know it was 3 hours. I would say I agree with a lot of things, like the score is really great, it's really, really well made, and Christopher Nolan, he's still not like aging in terms of his skill as a director, which is awesome. However, and I agree with the acting, but I also think Robert Downey Jr. did a really good job, and I really liked his character. I don't think it was all Cillian Murphy. I don't know if he's a Killian or Cillian. I think I've heard both. Cillian Murphy, yeah, he's great, and he plays sort of this really sort of enigmatic and mysterious Oppenheimer character that is kind of like a chameleon in the sense that he doesn't really occupy like a single ideology in the movie, and he's sort of hard to understand, but it comes off as like a really likable character for me, at least. And then going towards some of the other things, he said it's sort of a long, drawn-out third act to the movie. Personally, especially watching it the second time, I didn't feel it was actually drawn out or a drag. The first time I watched it, I kind of got a little tired at the end, so maybe this film needs another watch. But I think the film is like remarkably engaging for like a historical biography, which it is. That's primarily what it is. And even though like I like history and stuff, it's hard for me to sit through some like historical movies and stuff because I just feel there's like when you try to make a historical movie, sometimes you forget about like execution and you're just trying to get a bunch of details in. And I think Oppenheimer does a pretty good job of like making the audience understand like the science of what's going on, but also like not getting bogged down in like nonsense techno babble that 99% of the people won't even understand, and even if they do, they just don't want to hear it. So I'd say to this person, maybe just try to watch it a second time and see what you think. But yeah, overall, it talked about a lot of stuff I agree with, some stuff I didn't. But let's go to a 9 out of 10 now. Okay, this person is a 9 out of 10 here. So this person says, you'll have to have your wits about you and your brain fully switched on watching Oppenheimer, as it could easily get away from a non-attentive viewer. This is intelligent filmmaking, which shows its audience great respect. It fires dialogue packed with information at a relentless pace, and jumps to very different times in Oppenheimer's life. continuously through its 3-hour runtime. There are visual clues to guide the viewer through these times, but again, you'll have to get to grips with this quite quickly. This relentlessness helps express the urgency from which the U.S. attacked its chase for the atomic bomb before Germany could do the same. An absolute career best performance from the consistently brilliant Cillian Murphy anchors the film. This is a nailed-on Oscar performance. In fact, the whole cast are fantastic, apart from for sometimes overwrought Emily Blunt performance. Robert Downey Jr. is particularly brilliant in a return to proper acting after his decade or so of calling it in. The screenplay is dense and layered. I'd say it was as thick as the Bible. Cinematography is quite stark and spare for the most part, but imbued with rich, luscious color in moments, especially the scenes with Florence Pugh. The score is beautiful at times, but mostly anxious and oppressive, adding to the relentless pacing. The 3-hour runtime flies by. All in all, I found it an intense, taxing, but highly rewarding watch. This is filmmaking at its finest. A really great watch, and 2,212 people out of 2,556 found this review helpful, so it's a pretty popular review, a bit more popular than the one I read before. So I guess it represents more what people thought. Yeah, I thought this was actually a really well-written review. Let's start from the top. You do have to have your brain switched on, and Christopher Nolan is like, he's got this massive space brain, and he's just so, I don't know what that guy's IQ is, but he's like really smart or something. And all his movies are kind of like that, but this movie and then Tenet and Inception and Memento and all those movies are, you really gotta pay attention. Even if you don't really care, it's just you'll look like you're dumb if you don't get it and you're watching it with other people. And then he goes on and says it has dialogue packed with information at a relentless pace. I think that I would say like 80% of the time the dialogue works for me. Sometimes it's a little like oversaturated and hard to understand. And I really know that it's difficult what he did with this movie. Like, it covered a huge range of time and like a lot of different ideas, and there was like a personal film and a scientific film and like somewhat of a war film and somewhat of a political film and even somewhat of like a Oliver Stone like conspiracy theory film, like the JFK movie. It kind of reminded me of the JFK movie at the end. So it was like always like changing sort of, but it worked and it flowed so well. So, but I thought like 80% of the time the dialogue worked for me, but sometimes it was a little much to digest all at once. But yeah, I think other than that, he did a really good job. Okay, the next time he says it has a relentless pace and jumps to different times in his life, which, yeah, I say, and I think it really works quite well. And you gotta, like, pay attention to how Nolan, like, he uses, like, black and white to denote the future, which is kind of strange, but it's also, once again, it's the space brain working out, so you just gotta trust the process. Let's see here. I'm continuing on his review here. Yeah, I loved like the there was like I say, it sort of goes back and forth between personal and science, and like on the science front there was like the intensity factor that was like the race with Germany for the bomb, And then in the personal life factor, it was sort of Oppenheimer's sort of naivete to believe that he could maintain like an intellectual interest in like left-wing circles without being considered a communist, and like the walls were closing in around him kind of, and it sort of made the film very intense. Then the guy goes on to say an absolute career best performance from Cillian Murphy. Yeah, I gotta say, I loved him in this movie. He's such a good actor, and I love him in all of Christopher Nolan's other movies, like Batman, the Batman movies, especially the first one, Batman Begins. And then also he's in Inception, and I really love his character in Inception. Like, I think I don't know, there's something about that character and the way he plays it that you really kind of feel bad for him. And I don't know, Cillian Murphy has this like subtlety and grace to how he plays his characters that is really appealing. And then I like this. Okay, so this guy criticizes Emily Blunt's performance. I liked it a lot. I thought she did a really good job, and I thought like I thought she played like a likable and smart, sort of tough character that sort of was in contrast to Oppenheimer's like more. Oppenheimer was more like a taskmaster and like a leader, but he's sort of not a fighter really. He sort of just controls people and like towards a common goal, but he sort of lets people push him around through the movie, and at least with words. And his wife is sort of like the more outwardly hostile, I guess, to people trying to attack his reputation, when he sort of more cares about his overarching morality or just views, I guess. Okay, then he talks about Robert Downey Jr., which I loved. I thought his performance was amazing, much like this guy. And yeah, I did think it was like a cool return to like, I love his Iron Man performance and everything, but it's nice to see him in a like a more traditional role where he gets to even play a guy that's not a hero, which I always like, and it just shows he's still doing good. And I actually kind of liked him. He looked older. I know some people don't like how he looks so old, but I thought he actually looked kind of cool in this movie as an older person. Let's see. He talks about the screenplay, thick as the Bible, cinematography. It's great. The score is really good. Who did it? I don't even know if it was Hans Zimmer. I don't think. Who did it? Yeah, it wasn't Hans Zimmer, because I think Hans Zimmer retired. It was Ludwig Göransson, which what did he do? He did Black Panther, and yeah, I don't know. He's done like some other stuff. Nothing really I have seen, but I guess he did a great job here. So maybe this will be Christopher Nolan's new guy he uses all the time instead of Hans Zimmer. And yeah, he said the 3-hour runtime flies by, which I also agree with. I didn't think it was a drag. Okay, let's move on to another review. Should I do like a positive review or like a really negative review? Should I do like a 1 star? No. Let's do a 4 out of 10 here. Okay, this guy, he titled his review Disappointing. He says, it saddens me that so many people are mistaking bigger and louder with quality. First of all, a loud soundtrack, no matter how good it might be, doesn't equate to quality. In this film, it is overwhelming, not complimenting the film. For the past year, we kept hearing to see it in IMAX, a format that is perfect for magnificent visuals and sound effects. Strangely, the pseudo-documentary has very little that benefits the enhanced film format. We have 99% straightforward, standard presentation of nothing special. It's pretty much all talk with no memorable backgrounds, camera angles, or special framing. Then we have the big event, something that lasts 5 minutes and is very underwhelming. I couldn't relate it to a nuclear or atomic reaction. Why the need for IMAX or any premium format? We have the opportunity to see is the depiction of pretty choppy and overlapping dialogue that does not allow us to follow the events as the movie jumps between various dates and points of view. Here's where I wonder about the need to shoot in both color or black and white. We are certainly not dealing with Lawrence of Arabia, Schindler's List, or Manhattan here. Those movies allowed us to relish what outstanding cinema could give us, the pain and glory of a complex life or event. But let's be fair and give it something its due. A 10 is meant for perfection, not just glare or sparkles. Remember, not all that shines is gold. Okay, so this guy's like a real pretentious guy, I guess. So he talks about Lawrence of Arabia, Schindler's List, or Manhattan. Okay, so he's really into like cinematography, clearly, especially in the case of Manhattan, I think. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with him about some of the dialogue can be choppy. Like I said, like 20% of it I feel doesn't work very well. But some of these points he makes aren't really that relevant. Like he says, no memorable camera angles or special framing. I think that's actually completely incorrect. Like there is like really nice direction, cinematography in this film. It's not like the greatest film ever made. It's not like one of Kubrick's films like the Space Odyssey movie or like Barry Lyndon or Clockwork Orange or other films like that with like really iconic like camera movement and camera. It's not that like that level, but it's the finest directed film I've seen in a long time in terms of like a new movie. Like obviously you can go back and find great films, but furthermore, he talks about the IMAX criticism was really doesn't make any sense to me because I saw it in IMAX and I saw it just at home, and I'll tell you, in IMAX it was way cooler. I don't know why this guy is so critical about the IMAX, and especially the bomb dropping scene was way cooler in IMAX. And I didn't even get a good seat in IMAX. I got like 3 from the screen. It was a really bad seat, and I still really liked it. And then he calls it a pseudo documentary, which it's not. I wouldn't like it if it was. It's definitely not a pseudo documentary. There's a lot of like personal stuff in it. It's not just like a science film. Yeah, not a pseudo documentary. That's not fair. Yeah, I disagree with a lot of what this guy says. The IMAX criticism is really just nonsense. And I do like he ends with, remember not all that shines is gold. I like that line, even though I don't agree with it. Someone give it a 0, okay. Yeah, some people are talking about it's too loud, the music's too loud or noisy. I definitely think it was loud in IMAX. I definitely think that. But I mean, I feel like you should just get over it. It's not that big of a deal. Just don't watch it in IMAX and turn the volume down. Let's see. Let's find some other ones. I'm trying to find ones that aren't so long. I'll just pick some. So this guy says Murphy is amazing, but Robert Downey Jr. steals the show. Alright, let's read this. let's get to the part where he talks about, okay, Cillian Murphy is really brilliant here. He made me feel for Oppenheimer, who isn't really a likable lead character. Surely Best Actor Oscar nomination is imminent. Robert Downey Jr. is amazing. He delivers a Best Supporting Actor nomination performance. Admittedly, I'm biased. I have always been a fan. But this is not a fan bias. You cannot take his eyes off him. When he's on the screen, again, not playing a particularly likable man. Matt Damon, Jason Clarke, Alden Alderreich, Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh, Josh Hartnett are all great. Tony Golden, Kenneth Branagh, the kid who played the Green Goblin in the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies, his name is escaping me, and Rami Malek are great too, but they don't have much screen time. Okay, okay, look, this guy talks about what I was saying. This reminds me of Oliver Stone's JFK. We should talk about that. The last third of the movie, literally, it was weird for a Christopher Nolan movie. It like gets into some kind of like conspiracy like thinking with like, you know, it kind of alludes to the assassination of JFK, and it gets into like smoky back rooms in Washington and like political operators and sort of corrupt dealings and unnamed figures running like sham trials to like destroy someone's reputation. So that was really surprising for me when I watched it with for the first time. But I liked it because it did remind me of JFK, which is it is a really good movie, and it's like it I feel like it sort of suffers from some of the downsides of Oppenheimer with like the really complex dialogue and sort of very you need to think a lot. It's really like heavy, but nonetheless, they're both great films. Although I do like Oppenheimer more definitely, but I think JFK sort of was the inspiration for the last half of or the last third of the film. And this sort of gets into the versatility of Oppenheimer. It sort of wears a lot of different hats, which is cool. And yep, this guy talks about Robert Downey Jr. and being a fan. I agree. I think he kind of stole the show for me too, although I don't know, they both did. I really liked both of them. I think what we're going to do is play a little bit of the score that we keep hearing about in case you guys haven't heard it. So let's play like the main theme here. Just gonna pull it up for you. And yeah, let's play. It's only 4 minutes 30 seconds. Alright, that was the Oppenheimer theme. So now you can hear what I've been talking about for the past 30 something minutes. And so you can judge for yourself whether it's A, too loud, or B, not that good, or whatever. I personally like it, and it works really well in some of the more like meant to be disturbing parts of the film, because it's kind of this weird, like, high pitched kind of unsettling soundtrack. I liked it a lot, and I hope you did too. Alright, but maybe we should move on from Oppenheimer for maybe like 10 minutes, and I'll just talk a little bit about the other movie I saw in the time between my last show and this show, and then we'll maybe finish with some more Oppenheimer, and then we'll sign off because we got about 20 mins left. So yeah, the movie that I saw for the second time again, that I really love, is The Rock, which is, I think it's Michael Bay's like first movie, or it's definitely his best movie. I'm not sure if it's his first. Let me just see that. I want to make sure. Michael Bay's first movie. Okay, let's see. Oh no, it was Bad Boys. This is his first film. Okay, so this is like I think it's his second film then. And I think undoubtedly his best movie. I think The Rock is a great movie and like a really, really, really good action film. And I think it's a really pure action film, and I'll get into the things I love about it later. It's definitely got flaws. Like, it is not a perfect movie by any means. But as an action film, it's really, really awesome, and I love it. So I just saw this like 2 weeks ago. It stars Sean Connery and Ed Harris, which are the standouts, and then Nicolas Cage, which is, he's there. I'm not sure if I like him or I don't like him, but I think that's a lot of people's opinion about Nicolas Cage. So The Rock is a movie sort of, you could call it like a offspring of Die Hard, in the sense it's like in a confined location. It's about a hostage crisis, and there's like this whole siege on the castle, let's say, and sort of the walls are closing in and all this stuff, and there's like there's some people like stowed away within the hostage takers castle, let's say, and they're screwing stuff up. So this movie, the premise is a former general sort of has enough, and after his wife dies, he sort of hijacks some weapons shipments and uses it to, well, he first takes over Alcatraz during a tour, and he takes a bunch of people hostage, and then he aims the missiles he took from the US government at San Francisco and makes like a variety of demands. Half of them are like money related and extortion related, but the other half are like political in nature, and they revolve around his sort of like disgust with how America treats its veterans and like its soldiers. And it's sort of not clear how much at the beginning of this is like for a moral mission, or are they just trying to extort the government for money. So we don't know at the beginning, but obviously the government springs into action to like sort of free the hostages and take out the threat against San Francisco. And sort of through that is the like last 60% of the movie. Probably it's the mission to free the hostages and whatnot, but it sort of goes horribly wrong from the beginning. And there's this amazing scene where like 90% of the team is slaughtered, and the only two people that are left are Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery. Definitely Nicolas Cage is the most sorry, Sean Connery is the most awesome of the two. He plays sort of this like he's like basically he plays like a guy that hasn't been in it for a long time, but it's sort of he's an expert in the field. And Nicolas Cage is definitely not like combat ready, but he sort of makes it through based on like his commitment to saving the day and whatnot. But yeah, inside this time period where they're in the Alcatraz, like being hunted down by the hostage takers as they're trying to like flush them out, the clock is ticking down, and negotiation with the U.S. government isn't going anywhere. And I'm not really sure if I want to spoil what happens, but let's say, I don't want to spoil it, but let's say the general and his troops have sort of different main priorities, and it sort of makes Ed Harris's character probably my favorite of the whole movie. I love Ed Harris because I think he's like this really tough, really cool, stern actor who's like really good, but then in this movie he plays like such a awesome character, and he's really not the villain, as it turns out. At the end you sort of see that he's not really he's not doing it for the money. He really has and he's sort of not intending to hurt anybody, but he's just trying to threaten people to get what he thinks is right done. And yeah, it's a really awesome character. And then Sean Connery, there's a cool theory I heard about this movie and Sean Connery. If you know anything about like the last 007 with Sean Connery, there was like a huge problem with the studio, and basically it ended up where a different studio ended up contracting Sean Connery to do a film, and it was sort of like an unofficial Bond movie, was Sean Connery's last Bond. And it was this whole bad thing where Sean Connery kind of felt betrayed that they were trying to pick a different Bond and whatnot, and he made this kind of like bad spin-off Bond movie, and everybody was like, he never got his final James Bond. So there's a theory that The Rock is the last 007 with Sean Connery, because he plays this like British spy that was captured, and there's all this like little details throughout the film that he is sort of could be the character from the old James Bond films, like brought back for one last final adventure. And I like that theory a lot because it makes the film kind of more cool. And yeah, it's got like, oh, let me talk about the flaws. The flaws are, there are like definitely cheesy lines in the movie. There are like a few that are really cringy. And there's like some bad acting from Nicolas Cage and like I think a few other people. But other than that, which is not it's not like pervasive. It's most of the film is really, really good. And there's some scenes that are really awesome. Like there's the firefight in the shower, which is best watched. It's like really, really awesome action sequence. And yeah, it's a very pure action film, but it's got like a great villain who sort of has his own redemption arc in a way. And Sean Connery is just awesome in it. Nick Cage, I don't know, but he's decent. I mean, he's fine. He's kind of funny because he's just not a great actor at all. But yeah, all right, that was a little break for The Rock that took 10 minutes, and I think we'll go back to Oppenheimer and end. This episode was just like talking about mostly Oppenheimer. I just needed to talk about The Rock a little bit because I think it's really great. I think everyone's got to see it. If you like action movies, you'll love it, and I think if you like movies in general, you'll like it a lot. And I love it. So, oh, it was nominated for an Oscar. Hold on. Oh, Best Sound. It did not win. Sad. Okay. Going back to Oppenheimer. Okay. Let's read like one or two more reviews and let's get on it. Okay. Alright, this looks like a good review, but it's long and I'm gonna have to sort of pick and choose what I say. Let's read his opening. Oppenheimer is a biographical thriller film written and directed by Christopher Nolan, based on the biography American Prometheus, starring Cillian Murphy in the lead role. In addition to Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh, it subverts the usual biopic formula to create a brilliantly layered examination of a man throughout all of his incredible accomplishments and fundamental flaws. Okay, now he goes on and says a lot of stuff, so I'm just gonna skip. Okay, let's talk. This guy talks about the, yeah, okay, good. He talks about the character. So, J. Robert Oppenheimer was a man so complex that I can't imagine the amount of pressure there was to play him effectively. The combined efforts of Murphy's acting and Nolan's direction helped make Oppenheimer one of the most fascinating individuals of the 20th century. This is not a man who can be viewed simply at face value. Yeah, I do agree with that. I think that it was a really, like, complicated... And, you know, I almost think that some of the people that watch this movie, I think their worldview is, like, fundamentally opposed from what the film is trying to do, because it doesn't cast him as, like, a black and white, good or bad person. It sort of is way more complex than that. And I think that turns a lot of people off. It doesn't turn me off, though. So he says, there are so many layers to his character that bears an in-depth explanation that only a movie like this can accomplish. This film paints Oppenheimer as neither a hero nor a villain, but rather a complicated man whose human qualities undermine what he'll be remembered for in the history books. Murphy approaches him like that of a Shakespearean figure, rife with flaws, haughtiness, and a sense of hubris that ends up sealing his inevitable fate. One scene that may have you admiring his remarkable talents in the field of nuclear physics, while another might cause you to hate him for his unfaithfulness to his family. He can be viewed simultaneously as a martyr and a scapegoat for the way in which he helped bring an end to the deadliest global conflict in history, while consequently ushering in something worse. Yeah. About that last part, I do like the end of the movie where it's like, it's almost, because in a way, nuclear weapons invented by, you know, Oppenheimer and all the scientists that were working with him did bring, like, unprecedented peace to the world after World War II, at least between the great powers, and we've never had a war like World War II ever again in terms of deaths. But on the other hand, like, it opens up the possibility of great horror, and it's sort of that's the perfect thing for Oppenheimer's character. It's he did like a great service in reality for his country and the world, and he's sort of a man of duty first. He just did his job and did it well. But on the other hand, he's sort of haunted by the thought that possibly he could have led to the end of the world. And yeah, so sort of like the duality of his character is the horror and the great talent and skill. Let's see. Okay, he talks about Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. shines as Louis Strauss, which is not only his best post-MCU role, but one of his best roles in general. Strauss is a man who is not viewed favorably by history due to his role of exposing Oppenheimer's ties to communism. He holds such a grudge against Oppenheimer that you can practically consider him as the true villain of the story. Downey takes every opportunity to show Strauss's two-faced nature, biding his time for the right moment to strip Oppenheimer from the record books and damage his reputation. Reportedly, Downey considers this his best role to date, and it definitely seems like he's putting everything he has into this performance. Oh, I did not hear that before, so apparently Robert Downey Jr. really likes this performance. Yeah, I think that it's certainly up there. I thought Tony Stark's definitely like his most iconic and most, it's like basically his magnum opus, I guess. And I think he acted really well in it, but I'd say that this one is sort of a different sort of role. It's more serious. I think they're both great, but yeah, I mean, if he thinks it's his best, then he certainly put in the effort. Okay, and then he ends with a nice conclusion. As a biopic and a Christopher Nolan film, Oppenheimer exceeds virtually all expectations to become one of the very best in both fields. There are few films that are able to tackle such subject matter with this much detail while also remaining entertaining all the way through. I guess sometimes all it takes is one brave, risk-taking filmmaker to prove this is really a possible task. We need more films like this to inspire thoughtful, creative discussion, and it is comforting to know that someone like Nolan is here to keep them in the mainstream. After all, it is a tough job, but someone's got to do it for us. I rated a perfect 10 out of 10. So this guy really rated it high. I actually have this film in my top 50, which is not easy, especially for a modern film to get in there. I really liked it, and I rated a 9.6 out of 10, I believe. I thought it really holds up there as like when you compare it to other films from the past. It's not like just recency bias, which, I used to have a lot, but I don't think I really do anymore. When I would see a film for the first time and then I'd fall in love with it. I think nowadays, I mean, that can still happen to me, but like this time I think I picked putting it in the top 50 wasn't a bad choice, because I think it's objectively a really high quality. The writing, the direction, the acting, the fact that it was entertaining, and it wasn't just a documentary, and it really built up a really cool character and was a really nice character study. I think it's got to be rewarded. I really liked it. But we are coming to about the end of the show here. I'm probably gonna wait about a minute and a half more before I sign off and leave you with a song as we transfer hosts. I probably will just play Can You Hear the Music, which is, yeah, it's sort of the famous nuke scene, I think, is where this song comes from. So yeah, on today's show we talked in depth about Oppenheimer, and we did a lot of reviews, which I think is a good way of getting other people's opinions without, I don't want to rely on like critics, I'd rather just rely on people. And we talked a lot about the actors, mostly, and we talked about a lot of the criticisms of the film and sort of why they're partially true, but I don't think they're all right. And then we did a little bit, 10 minutes on The Rock, which is a really awesome action movie that I recommend. And yeah, I also recommend, if you have 3 hours to spare and you are willing to sort of watch it and quiet and like pay attention to this movie, then yeah, watch Oppenheimer. And if you can actually see it in theaters, which it definitely is still in theaters, I'm pretty sure. I think they re-released it. Go do that. But yeah, this has been Nima Govai on KUCI 88.9 Irvine, Cinéshow, with you to the end of the line.